Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy.
Okay, so trigger warnings: murder of children, attempted suicide, arson, domestic violence, just in general, sheer stupidity. We've got a family annihilator and a con artist. So, fun
A
stuff.
full day.
Yeah. This case is actually going to be two different people because the first one's fairly short. And my theme for these two are fake doctors. Our first guy we're going to talk about is Jean Claude Romand. He was born on February 11th, 1954 in France. Jean Claude was a French con artist who turned into a spree killer and a family annihilator. He pretended to be a medical professional, and he told his friends and family that he worked for the World Health Organization, also known as WHO, and kept lying to his family and friends for 18 years. That's pretty, yeah, right?
Like he had his own practice?
Not quite. So Jean-Claude was born in France, like I said, and he studied at a French school until he got his bachelor's. And then in 1971, he registered for what I interpreted to be like medical school, but he dropped out after one term. So
did he fake it? I would imagine he would have to in order to have buy-in that his relatives think he's a doctor.
So they knew he enrolled in school, but I guess he just couldn't cut it and quit, but didn't tell anybody he quit. It was just, a simple lie that he passed a second. Well, it started with a simple lie that he passed his second year medical examination, but he never really actually took it.
Naturally, because he dropped out.
Exactly. But he never actually qualified as a doctor, but his parents did not know. His friends and families thought that he was a successful medical professional. He gave the impression that he had researched arteriosclerosis, but in reality, guess what he did for his daytime job? He wandered around and used the free information services of the local WHO building. So he spent 18 years wandering around just dicking off.
How was he making money? Like, who was supporting him?
That's what I was curious about. But we will get there in a second. He left for work, or supposedly for work, and he would go on business trips. But he'd only go to the airport and spend a couple days in a hotel room near the airport. And then while he was in the hotel, he would study medical journals and travel guides about the places that he lied and said he was working at. And he would live off the money that his wife made, off of her salary, and the money that him and her made off of selling an apartment. And then, because that also wasn't enough, he would also get money from various relatives who trusted this guy when he told them that he was investing money in various imaginary hedge funds and foreign ventures. So they were just giving him money, trusting that they were going to eventually get some type of return. He would also, this makes him a real world-class piece of garbage. In my opinion, if he hasn't crossed that yet, this is what pushes it over the edge for me. He would claim to have cancer, and as a means to arouse mercy in other people, he would tell them that he could only get a cure for his cancer due to his position at WHO, and people would give him money.
Well, that's a shitty lie to make up anyhow.
Yes, that's what pushes him over the edge in the beginning days, for me at least, because that's fake cancer.
Did he actually get it in real life? Because I feel like it'd be one of those times that I'd be okay with somebody getting cancer.
No, unfortunately, I don't think he does. In the days before his killing spree, he had a mistress, by the way. His ex-mistress started asking for the money she had given him because his wife had become suspicious and started questioning his non-existent double life.
It's about time somebody starts sniffing around.
I know. Well, like uh,
I
18
don't
years.
understand how. I mean, I guess she had a whole lot of trust in her spouse, as you should, I suppose, there. But the business trips, that, like, wouldn't you be able to tell that it was a local hotel?
I don't think she asked for
Yeah, you said it's the 50s, so I
no
guess she's not
70s. He was
70s.
in the 50s, in the
Mm,
70s.
well, we're teetering on the who's
Technology,
handling the finances, I suppose.
technology. So I don't think at that point. I guess somewhere around this point we're reaching the late 80s because he goes on his killing spree in 93. So
Well, and who would think that their spouse was lying about a business trip and just reading about the places in a local hotel?
yeah. Yeah. He's a real peach. His mistress is wanting the money back. His wife is now confronting him, and all this factors into the increased pressure for which Jean Claude reaches the point of no return. Although it's not proven, it's suspected that in the middle of an argument that he had with his wife the night of the murders, she finally became aware of like all of his lies. She found
Who's
out he wasn't
murdered?
really a doctor. She wasn't like she knew that he wasn't being faithful to her. Like
He murdered her, or during what murders?
no, it's the night of the murders.
Of
So,
hers? Like,
uh
that's what
huh,
I. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Like before he kills her, like that's what pushed him over the edge. Like he was already reaching his snapping point because everybody's wanting their money back that they've loaned him,
Yeah.
and now his wife's like, "Hey, um, where's all this money that you're supposed to be giving back? Where is it coming from? What are you doing during the day?
And
This is
congratulations on your cancer recovery.
right." So on January 9th, 1993, Jean-Claude withdrew 2,000 francs, which is the equivalent of $2,059.07 in US dollars, and borrowed a 22 long rifle from his father. And Jean-Claude went and purchased a suppressor and gas cans, and he asked for them to be gift wrapped. That night, he beat his wife to death on their double bed with a rolling pin. Then he left her body until the morning and slept next to her dead body.
Ew.
Like, yeah. So he beat her to death with a rolling pin and then slept next to her. That's sick.
Okay, so the amount of times I've read that somebody snuggles with a corpse at night, I don't. I. I. I can't. I don't. The
No.
state of mind there.
Well, and also not to get too graphic and disgusting, but the smells. Have you ever been around a dead animal? Like they release their bowels and all their bodily fluids and just the gases and everything
Thanks
that
for that.
erupts from them. Like
I don't like when
that's
Dave's got cold feet. Sorry.
just no. I just okay. Anyway, the next morning, he woke up their children. His children were very young, like early elementary school age. He wakes up his children, they have breakfast, and they watch cartoons together. He put them to bed that night. Once they'd fallen asleep, he shot them both in the head with the shotgun.
Mm.
After the murder of his family, his wife and his kids, the only people left to expose him were his parents and his ex mistress. And his ex, by the way, had loaned him 900,000 francs, which again in US dollars is around $926,583. So it's quite a bit of money to loan your boyfriend.
Mm-mm-mm.
Next morning, Jean Claude goes to his parents' house, has a meal with them, and then immediately after they're finished eating, he shoots them. He repeatedly shot them both and then killed the family dog.
Mm. What kind of dog?
Do? I don't know.
Not that it matters, but
So now he's completely annihilated his entire family, his parents, his wife, his kids, all of them dead. That night, he picks up his ex-mistress. He tells her they were invited to a dinner with at the time, health minister.
Had she previously been invited to dinners?
I'm not sure.
I feel like that's frowned upon, taking your mistress to a work like a work social, but okay.
A little sketchy, but whatever. He pretends that they're lost, tells her to get out of the car, and as she turns to get out of the passenger seat, he tries to strangle her with a cord and sprays pepper spray in her face, to which she fights back, manages to get him off of her, and he says, "I'm sorry," asks her to please don't tell, and takes her home.
I thought you were into it. Read the room wrong.
After making her promise not to tell anybody about the attempted murder and he drops her off, he goes home to his family home where his dead wife and
Please,
dead children
please,
are.
please, please, please tell me she doesn't stay quiet. You're
She
fucking
does.
kidding.
No. I mean, I would love to tell. I said sheer stupidity in my,
Yeah, like, no
yeah.
worries, no worries. It's not the first time a boyfriend's tried to strangle me.
I
I'll
just
see you
like,
in the morning.
uh, uh, like, seriously, if a guy wraps a cord around your throat and sprays you with pepper spray,
That's not foreplay.
it's definitely not foreplay. And if it is your foreplay, make sure you know your safe word.
I don't know what kind of sick shit you're into, Andrea, but I feel like that went too far.
It was just referencing the article that you sent me the
Although
other
that would
day.
explain how you're able to keep your sinuses so free during an allergy season.
Or just don't have allergies.
Each other at night. Love you. You need a Kleenex.
No, but speaking of mace, we're going to divert for a second because we were just talking about this the other day.
Macing each
So
other.
actually, we'll save it for the end. No, the cooking with peppers.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. I was gonna say, at least you're discussing where you define the line of assault and
No, I have not now, nor have I ever pepper sprayed my husband or been pepper sprayed myself, nor would I find it foreplay.
good to know. So go on.
Anyway, where was I? So
He went
he,
home to the bodies.
yep, went home to the bodies. He
But they
sat down
smell
on the
great,
couch. Yep. He sat on the couch, decided to watch himself some TV. He
naturally.
poured gasoline all over the house, sets it on fire. He took an
Of
overdose.
course he would, because why would he clean? I'm sorry.
Well, this is his way to kill himself also.
Oh,
So
sorry.
he, no, don't be sorry because it's all a manipulation because he's a piece of shit and can't even kill himself correctly because he's just not willing to do so. So anyway, you'll get it in a second. He lights the gasoline on fire, takes an overdose of sleeping pills to create the appearance of an intended suicide. This attempt was doubtful because the pills that he took were like super duper expired, so they weren't very potent. And he had access to more effective barbiturates, but chose to use the expired sleeping pills. And he set the fire with the timing of taking his pills like right after he set the fire. And he chose the time of day when he knew people would be getting up for work. So the fire would be seen very quickly and firefighters would be able to get to him. He sees the road cleaners coming through, cleaning the road, doing street sweeping. And that's when he sets the fire, pops his pills. He's rescued by 4:40 in the morning. He obviously survived the blaze, refused to talk to police. But initially, the police thought that he was just so traumatized from seeing his family killed and the house set on fire that he was just unable to speak. Just poor guy, too traumatized. But then they find everyone else and they realize, hey, this piece of garbage just killed his family. So he's arrested for murder and his trial begins on June 25th, 1996. And in July of 1996, Jean Claude is sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 22 years. Again, I don't understand why they put that clause in there. I don't feel like they should be paroled out. But again, that's just me.
I
It
mean,
just wiped
like,
out your,
that's a whole family.
yes, your mom, your dad, your wife, two kids attempted to kill your ex-girlfriend,
Oh, yeah, I already
and
forgot about her.
well,
'Cause she
and
didn't tattle,
took
so
off.
did she come forward when the bodies were there? Well, I guess she had to have come forward for it to be part of the case.
True. He was eligible for parole in 2015. He just hasn't tried to get out at that point in time. Okay.
Mhm.
So 2015. But an appeals court granted Jean Claude Romand parole in 2019. He'd been in jail for 26 years. He was
What
released to the custody of a nearby Benedict monastery and had an electronic bracelet placed on him to ensure that he didn't try to take off. Which I
what's
thought that when you got out, you were out. I didn't know that they still
well,
like I get
I think there's, like, a chunk of
like a
time where it
probation.
well, yeah, well, they're released whatever criteria, so that way if they do get into trouble again, that's revoked, and then they serve the rest of their sentence.
Right. So he's been out since 2019.
What's he been up to?
I'm not sure, but he was declared to suffer from narcissistic personality disorder and considered himself to be highly important for his family's survival and lives, if
Their
not
survival?
uh-huh, if not a fundamental part of their lives. Like, he's such an asshole. Yes,
Uh,
you're an important part of their survival, seeing as how that you don't kill them.
but that would be they're dead.
Mhm.
They didn't survive anything. Maybe somebody
Correct.
needs to explain the words to him. It's a
Um,
comprehension problem.
so not really a fun fact, but just an additional fact on him. He's suspected of killing his father-in-law back in 1988 by pushing him down the stairs. So Jean Claude is the only witness to the death of his father-in-law on
He
October
did.
23rd, 1988. His father-in-law had a fatal fall on the stairs of his own home a few days after asking for reimbursement of part of his financial investment. Rescuers arrived on the scene and claimed they heard the father-in-law mumble, Jean Claude, me, Jean Claude, me. And then they had to put an oxygen mask on him to try to help him. And later he died of his injuries, but he like slipped into a coma. So he's in a coma for a few days and never woke up. And the courts decided it was an accident and Jean Claude was not prosecuted. But what also makes this guy so much fun is he later organized his father-in-law's funeral and launched a fundraiser to which he
He
diverted all the
benefited.
funds and pocketed all that money. So
Not surprised there. He had travel plans.
he sure did. So he was
Now,
our
I've got a question. When he got out of jail, are him and his girlfriend still dating? Like, she kept
seeing
that
as how
little
it was 26
secret for a
years.
bit. You don't know. She could have been pen paling him.
It's true, but I doubt it. So Claire
Gonna
and I
throw
were discussing it the other day, and we both, in the beginning of our learning to cook days, I don't know how many of you guys are out there, but for our young audience that are new to cooking or interested in cooking,
season
we both,
your chicken with the dried red pepper after it's cooked.
yes, because apparently nobody feels the need to let you know if you add red pepper flakes to the chicken before you bake or before you cook it on a skillet, it turns it into pepper spray, and you will pepper spray the shit out
Yeah,
of your own face.
it's a
Been
nice
there.
peppery steam
Yes, it
lean
doesn't
over.
feel good. I did that. I was like
Or yeah, or try
21.
it out and clean out your sinuses, whatever.
Maybe wear some goggles, like the swimming goggles, let them suction to your face.
But I feel like if you breathe it in, you're still like the eyeballs
Well,
are only part of it.
yes, but do you know what it's like when you can't
Yes, I
see
do.
and your throat and your nose and your face and your like I felt like my face was on fire. That shit was not fun at all.
So you did it a second time?
No. So now that we've talked about Doctor Who, Jean Claude, by the way, that's what I'm going to name this one. It's Doctor Who. And then this one is going to be Dr. Love. So we've got Malachi Love Robinson. Have you ever noticed that we talk a lot about Robinsons?
Yes.
Like, seriously, have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Nothing against Robinsons. It's just it must be a very common last name that I didn't realize was so common. But Malachi Love Robinson was born in May 1997 in West Palm Beach, Florida. We're going to refer to Malachi as Dr. Love. Okay?
Mhm.
He was a teenager who pretended to be a doctor. So, a little back history before we break into Dr. Love's stuff. In the United States, someone who wants to help an injured or sick person is usually protected from liability in case the injured person suffers further damage. The laws to this situation are called Good Samaritan laws. There's differences among the United States, and each state has like their own general clarity, I guess, on their expectations of being a good Samaritan. But for the most part, it's any person who in good faith renders emergency care without compensation or expectation of compensation at the scene of an incident or emergency to the victim of an accident or emergency shall not be liable for any civil damages resulting from the person's act or omission, except for such damages as may result from the person's gross negligence. So basically, unless you do the shit expecting to make something for profit and you're actually trying to help, that there is no legal repercussions. Does that make sense?
But it's gotta be an emergency.
Right. The laws are meant to encourage people to help without the worry of legal liability. So in the case of Dr. Love, it questions whether good intentions correspond to ethical decisions. Does that make sense?
Mm.
We also have to cross the topic of holistic and alternative medicines because Dr. Love, this will all, I promise, have to do with his case because he's another manipulator. Practitioners of holistic medicine, basically what their claim is that they can use alternative therapies as well as conventional medications to treat patients. So some of these alternative therapies may be like diet, exercise, psychotherapy, spiritual counseling, acupuncture, homeopathy, and neuropathy. And for those that don't know and have been living under a rock, traditional acupuncture is like sticking the needles in to points around the body, meant to relieve like neck and back pain, nausea, anxiety, depression, and insomnia. Homeopathy is the treatment of a disease by giving small doses of substances which cause the same symptoms in a healthy person. So the philosophy behind this is that the body has the ability to heal itself. So like an example would be a homeopathic treatment for like a common cold would be for you to eat raw onions because both cause similar symptoms of teary eyes and runny noses. Does that make sense? I
Yeah.
thought that was really weird, but that was the example I found. And I was like, all right, never heard it.
Gives
Good
me
to know.
heartburn just thinking about it.
And then the naturopathy,
Herbs?
dietary lifestyle changes, and herbal substances. So, yes, or supplements. So, basically, like detox and stuff like that. So, a common misconception with alternative medicine physicians is that they do not require a license to practice. Did you know that? Like,
No.
I didn't either. I thought that was interesting. Every
There's
state,
no requirement at all?
so every state has a variation of different steps to gain like legal accreditation, but it's not the same as becoming like an MD.
Hmm. What are some of the requirements?
Well, there is no standardized national system for credentialing alternative health practitioners. All states require some combination of either completing a certified program, completion of a specified amount of training, and completion of a written or practical exam. I guess to get certified, you got to take the class and then pass whatever test. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And that's also true in Florida. Only licensed physicians are permitted to offer alternative medicine to patients in Florida. At least Florida has their shit together. And even if you want to offer an alternative medication or alternative treatments, you have to be a licensed physician. But in 2016, Dr. Love impersonated an anesthesiologist at St. Mary's Medical Center and launched his own medical care center in the New Birth, New Life Holistic Alternative Medicine Center and Urgent Care. That is one hell of a mouthful to say.
He's how old?
He was 17, 16.
He reached for the stars.
Yeah, he was 16. So he's got goals.
He must have looked older than he was.
He definitely does not. He looks like a baby. Like he's got one of those young baby faces too. I saw that and I was just like, huh. If I was pregnant with one of my kids and the doctor came strolling and looked like this kid, I'd been like,
Go get your mommy.
yeah, pretty much. Like he looks younger. Like I saw the picture of him when he's like 20 and he looks like he's 12. We'll post pictures. But on January 13th, 2015, Dr. Love was removed off the property of St. Mary's Medical Center in West Palm Beach, Florida, for impersonating a medical personnel. He was in the OBGYN's office in a white lab coat and a stethoscope around his neck, and he was wearing a face mask. They removed him from walking in to a woman's exam. He was 17 at the time, and Dr. Love insisted that he'd been a doctor for years. He claimed that he had requested only to shadow physicians and that the situation had been blown way out of proportion. Right.
Right,
Like,
right.
yeah. Like, I'm sorry. This coming from the kid walking into the woman with her legs spread eagle and her vagina out.
So
And
I
he's like,
feel
oh,
like
no,
I
this
feel
is
like
getting blown way out of proportion. It's
I
okay.
I feel like he had a mask on because he knew he didn't look old enough.
Probably. A security guard later says that Dr. Love had been seen working at the hospital for about a month, even in restricted areas. So he somehow even got like a name badge to let him into the restricted areas. Dr. Sebastian Kent, an actual OBGYN, said that Dr. Love had introduced himself as an anesthesiologist. He said Love intricated himself with Dr. Kent so that he would take him around to like the different parts of the hospital and kind of teach him, take him under his wing.
That's how he got an ID.
Sounds like it. He doesn't admit to that. He doesn't admit to helping this kid because I feel like that would make him look stupid.
Yeah, because I bet he probably did the whole, "Hey, so I lost it. Do you know how I can get another one?"
It's entirely possible.
Not saying that's
So,
what happened. Not to throw the guy under a bus.
yeah. But he did escort this kid around and take him into actual exams. So I feel like that throws himself under the bus to a certain extent.
Is he now studying to be a doctor?
He's not. So Dr. Love stood in on, like I said, different exams and gave advice to patients and watched at least one gynecological procedure.
How
It
did
was at,
he
huh?
participate in conversations with patients?
So it was at that point that doctors realized that things don't seem on the up and up with this kid. They become suspicious, and Dr. Love was caught when he entered the exam room of a pregnant woman and he was arrested. But because he was a minor, the courts decided they would not charge him with anything, and his name and age would not be released to the public. He was briefly detained and let off with a warning.
But I wonder what his parents said.
Right? That's what I thought. So we'll get to that because I feel like with a lot of our other
Yeah.
cases, yes, I feel like with a lot of our other cases, a lot of it comes from the home life, and we will get to that.
I feel like they're like, son, I
Tell me your
thought you were at
feels.
summer camp. Like, I don't know whether to be proud or disappointed. You uh, perpetuated a fraud, but then also were curious of the medical department.
Well, I mean, January 13th, when he got hauled out, he was supposed to be in school. He didn't, it's not like he graduated from high school. Where did his parents think he was? Did the school not do attendance?
Mm-hmm.
Was this like an after school special? So I found this and it was very funny. It made me chuckle. But Dr. Love is by no means the first person to pretend to be a doctor, but he could be the youngest, dumbest, and boldest. Because not only did he just get off with a warning, but Dr. Love is a repeat offender. So after a few months, he began working as a massage therapist in a rehabilitation facility in Florida. And then they got an anonymous tip saying that he was unlicensed and untrained. And on December 2nd, he received a cease and desist letter. But that wasn't enough because when he opens his own practice of the New Birth, New Life Holistic Alternative Medicine Medical Center and Urgent Care in West Palm Beach, Dr. Love hired 2 employees. He
I
had an
love that they sent him a cease and desist letter. We know what you're doing is not legal, but you need to cut that out, okay, son?
like you've already been warned. Cut the shit out, dude. But no, he goes and opens his own practice and hires 2 employees. He hires an operations director and a programs director, which by the way, they have to feel like jackasses too, by the like this kid hired me and he's not even a real doctor. Like when it all comes to light.
Yeah.
So Dr. Love created a NBNL website. I guess that's something to do with doctors like to verify their credentials or whatever. He creates a Facebook page for his new facility and he said and established an account for himself on the doctor's rating website of healthgrades.org. He described himself as a well-rounded professional that treats and cares for patients using a system of practice that bases treatment of physiological functions and abnormal conditions on natural laws governing the human body, utilizing physiological, psychological, and mechanical methods such as air, water, light, heat, earth, phototherapy, food, and herb therapy, psychotherapy, electrotherapy, physiotherapy, minor and orifical surgery. He's got a lot that he's claiming he's capable of doing. He also lists his age as 25 and claims to be a minister. Yet again, another that claims religion as their. Yes. Anyway, so he creates a fake diploma from the University of Arizona, which he also shares on his Facebook page. He creates false credentials that were revealed to be fake when he was giving an office tour to a local ABC affiliate morning show. Yeah,
What?
yeah, he got on TV. One of Dr. Love's most unfortunate patients was an 86-year-old Anita Morrison. She was in search of treatment for severe stomach pains. Dr. Love examined her body and declared that she was suffering from arthritis. He sold her vitamins, which, no surprise, did not help her. Like, I'm sorry, you have arthritis. That's why your tummy hurts. No.
Never heard of arthritis of the stomach.
Right?
Must be new and
So
unfortunate.
Dr. Love returns four times to this woman's home because he decides to do house calls for her. He pretends to be a gynecologist He robs his patients, multiple patients, but the 86-year-old woman, he drained her account of nearly $40,000. That's so wrong. This poor lady. Also, I just like to point out that he's 17 years old and he's decrusting an 86-year-old woman.
Yeah.
Just, I feel like there's a lot of other
His
ways to
his
make money and to see vaginas.
his curiosity knew no bounds. Yeah, but how many teenagers do you know are getting paid to see said vaginas? They're generally gonna have to fork over some dough if that's the way it's gonna go, either virtually or not.
There's plenty of porn on the internet at this point.
But they're not paying him to look at it,
That's true.
and
But
he
still,
was up close and personal.
Claire, I
But
realize you're not a man, but when you were 17 years old, how much money would you want to make to stare at some 86-year-old man's penis?
I think we've discussed that I cannot get into the minds of the male psyche to explain why they do things the way they do or where the curiosity takes them. But yeah, definitely can't. No, I would pay to not have to look.
So, Dr. Love was arrested in February 2016 for falsifying his medical license and misleading patients after police set up a sting operation and caught him violating Florida's laws.
You mean he didn't get his letter?
He did not
They
cease and desist. So, no.
specifically said cease and desist. Now they have a
Well,
sting operation. Just knock on the fucking door and say, "Hey, kid, you're not a doctor. Go to school." This is truancy at the utmost level.
so in order for police to catch this kid, this just seemed slightly obnoxious to me. But then again, I have different standards. They decide to send in an undercover agent to his office, and they arrested him after their undercover agent received a physical exam. I'm sorry, but what? What? You
Right.
couldn't
So I
go
get
in and
being
just
caught
ask
in
him?
the act, but I
Like,
who volunteered for that? Did they
I
draw
don't,
straws?
I don't know, but this poor female officer has to go in and go, I guess, go spread eagle for this kid. And in the middle of having her vagina examined by him, be like, by the way, you're under arrest, kid. Like, no, just no. You can't tell me there weren't other ways that he could have been arrested.
Yeah.
But the
She
the
took one for the
cojones,
team.
yes, she sure did. The cojones on this kid. I mean, even after he's arrested, he made national headlines because he was willing to appear on Good Morning America and the Today Show to defend himself.
So somebody needs to explain to him how becoming a doctor works and also how the law works. It's not trial by the news as much as some people would like to think.
So he truly believed that he was a doctor because he received a PhD from an online church school.
What?
I thought I'd just let that one sink in for a second. So his fake diplomas hanging on his wall, he claimed to have received from Southwest College of Natural Medicine.
Did he actually attend a course?
I don't know. I think it's just one of those things that there's those scams that, hey, get your degree in this, and then you take some magic, you give them some money, and they give you a fake degree. I think that's what he did. But he also falsified the diploma from Arizona State University. And when he was confronted by authorities following his second arrest, Dr. Love admitted that the degrees were indeed fraudulent. But he maintained that he was still technically a doctor since he received a PhD from U Life Church, an online Christian school. Authorities disagreed. So Dr. Love denied the charges that he impersonated a medical doctor by saying I never said that I went to school to be an MD. I don't know why, but I just like he's like a typical teenager. Like he's just playing word games and arguing. Like, no, I never said I was an MD. Duh. I said I was a PhD. I can't help it if they gave me money for looking at their vaginas. However,
but you can. Like,
I just like, oh gosh. So the fact that he opened a clinic with the word medical in its title negates the claim that he never tried to convince anyone that he was a medical doctor.
I'd
So
like to know where he
clearly,
got the money for everything, though, to open up his own practice. I assume it wasn't in his bedroom and he wasn't just inviting people upstairs or in the garage, or he didn't build himself an exam table.
better yet, I'm curious if he got paid by the hospital where he was pretending to be an employee.
Ah, mm,
He was there for over a month.
yeah.
He was given a badge. So on, let's see here, January 4th, 2018, Dr. Love pled guilty to 14 criminal charges and was sentenced to only 3.5 years behind bars. He received credit for 16 months already served. He will not be on probation. If, again, multiple times, repeat offender, and you're not going to keep an eye on him, I feel like is stupid.
Well,
But
and I think in the scheme of things, it's like what danger does he pose? Yeah, he for or produced a fraudulent business and all that, but keeping an eye on the people who might do harm and they have to let out.
yeah,
Mm,
he has to pay back his victims. So he owes more than $80,000. But at the same time, I feel like unless that lady who had the stomach pains, like she's 86, she's older. What happens if she's not alive by the time he's out to try to
mm,
make that kind of money? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Just a side note, his clinic was open for 3 months. And despite being only 18 and not a real doctor, he managed to, before he was arrested, he managed to rent and set up a convincing clinic. Members of his staff on his website declined to comment.
Naturally.
The 86-year-old woman, during one of the house calls where he was robbing her blind, he ended up calling an ambulance because she was in so much pain. So she did at least get the help she needed, but he convinced her before she was hauled off by the ambulance to leave her purse and her checkbook at home and that he would bring it to her. He used her checks to make payments for his car loans and his credit cards. He, along with his charges, by the way, he was charged with fraud and grand theft. And considering the fact that he was initially facing 90 years in prison, he got off pretty easy with only 3.5 and 16 months like time
Yeah.
served. So since his conviction, he was removed off of the healthgrades.com website that ranks doctors, which, by the way, he had a 5-star rating given to himself by himself. His website boasted credentials that don't even exist. So when you guys are looking for doctors on the internet, at least double check their credentials. Most people are familiar with MD or PhD, but for some reason, Dr. Love followed his name up with HHP-C.
And no
And
one went, "What's that mean?"
no, they didn't. And he also followed it up with AMP-C. And it turns out neither one of them are a title or actually stand for anything. I would be curious to see if those are on his church credentials, like that where he says that he got a degree as a PhD.
I feel like it has to, only because maybe that's why he did get a lesser charge if it was like a legitimate he thought he was the only one in the world to realize he could become a doctor overnight.
Well, at the same time, don't you think he needs like some type of psych eval? Because how do you not get that? You know what I mean? If he
Well,
truly believes that he wasn't doing anything wrong and that he could get his, and it wasn't just a con, then don't you think he needs some type of evaluation to
well,
help him?
mm,
Because
we
as we've
don't know
seen,
his level of intelligence, so he could be a moron who did think he got his degree and everybody else is stupid for taking years to get theirs.
true. But as we've seen, we've had a lot of con artists that start off trying to scam people out of their money who turn into kidnappers, rapists, and serial killers. So I'll be curious to see in another decade if this kid ends up on that list.
I thought we don't know his name.
No, his name is Dr. Malachi Love-Robinson.
Then who is the
That's why we're
person who
calling him
said they
Dr.
wouldn't?
Love. No, no, no. When he was 16 and got hauled out of the first hospital
Uh-huh.
for walking in on the gynecological exam, and he was only 16, that's when they were just like, we're not going to release his name or his age or any of that. We're just going to give him a slap on the wrist, tell him don't do that. But then
Okay.
as he got older, by the time he was finally arrested, he was 18. So that's why it's all public information, I guess. But because he's 18 and he kept defending himself, he brought his juvenile years to light by saying, look, this is what I've been doing. I was 16. I got my PhD from this online church school. I am a doctor. That's why this is all readily available. But along with our previous doctor, who was a family annihilator and a true piece of garbage, this kid hasn't quite reached that level by any means because he does not kill anyone.
Yeah, but he very well could have been well on his way.
Yes, that's true. And still it could be because he's walking around free. But he not only scammed his patients, but he also had scammed his 73-year-old godmother.
Ew,
He
he
used
didn't
her,
examine her, did he?
I hope not. He used her name to get a car loan, and he used her social security number and her credit cards to purchase iPads and a $1,200 cell phone.
The
Yeah. Yep. He
office
claimed,
equipment.
yes, he claimed he was purchasing the car for not only himself, but also for his godmother. He just forgot to mention it to her. The maximum sentence for those charges is 10 years, and he was arrested in Stafford County, Virginia. That's when they arrested him at the dealership for buying the $35,000 Jaguar. He pled guilty to one count of false statement to obtain credit and forgery type charge and served 1 year in jail. And then they sent him back to Florida for the whole practicing without a license thing. But back to his upbringing, Malachi Love-Robinson's grandfather came to Malachi's defense, saying that he complained to reporters that he did not appreciate or like the way that Dr. Love was being portrayed. And his grandfather, William McKenzie, backed him up by saying that Malachi did what he did because he felt like he was doing the right thing. That's bullshit. Okay. We're going to go salty nuts bullshit card here because no, he's literally robbing these people. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
well, the check stealing thing, that's clearly robbery, but I'd want to research where he thought he got his supposed degree and see if, I mean, again, you got to take into account he's an idiot and he's a teenager who maybe was fraudulent or a victim of a fraudulent program to begin with. And I feel like there's got to be some founding to that he got such a light sentence. So
Well, I feel like because they slapped him with such a light sentence the other two times by not putting anything in his record or keeping tabs on him, and then only serving him with a cease and desist order. Like, he got away with it twice. Then he opened his own practice where he escalated to actually stealing money from his patients. And then you've got his grandfather who's saying that, yeah, so he stole from his godmother. He stole from these ladies, but he was doing good. He didn't mean any harm by it, and that he's being portrayed to be a villain here. And then his grandfather continues on and says that he believes that once his grandson is released and comes up out of this, he's going to prove a lot of people wrong and continue to help people.
Okay.
He didn't help
Nobody
anybody.
hold your breath. Well, he called the ambulance, Andrea.
William McKenzie believed that Malachi had received degrees online that he hadn't, and that his grandson had only lied because he was such a private person.
Yeah, get it? See what he did there?
I do. I wasn't sure if you'd go there, but yes. And William McKenzie and Malachi Love-Robinson were both listed as pastors at a church, but turns out the address to said church was William McKenzie's house. And when they questioned him on it, he declined to comment. So I feel like the apple didn't fall too far from the tree in that family.
Yeah.
If you dig a little deeper, I'm guessing there might be some more cons in there. But those were my two cases. We got Dr. Who, the family annihilator, and Dr. Love, the decruster of old vaginas.
Ew. It's an interesting place to leave it. Decruster of vaginas. Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.